Chapter 1. The Unexpected Reunion. The rain had started earlier that morning, soft and steady, like the world was holding its breath. It was the kind of rain that wasn't harsh, but insistent, as if it was reminding you of something important. For Emma, the rain was a welcome companion on the long walk through the city. She had been away for months, far away from the place that had once been home, and now, as she made her way back to the familiar streets, there was a strange sense of both nostalgia and unease in her heart. She hadn't planned on returning. The city had never felt like the right place for her after everything had fallen apart. But here she was, walking past the cafe where they had met countless times, the bookshop where they'd spent hours browsing and laughing, and the park bench where they had shared their first kiss. The memories flooded back, both sweet and painful. Her mind drifted to Jack, the man she had once loved with all her heart. Their love had been effortless at first, like two people who were always meant to be together. But somewhere along the way they had drifted apart. It wasn't one big moment but a series of small things. Unspoken words, missed connections, and moments where the space between them grew too wide to bridge. She hadn't seen or heard from Jack since the day she left. No phone calls, no letters, no messages. It had been months, and the silence between them had been deafening. But now, as Emma passed by the park where they had spent so many afternoons together, she felt an odd pull. Maybe it was the rain. Maybe it was the familiarity of the place. Or maybe, just maybe, she was hoping that she'd run into him. The thought made her heart race, but she quickly pushed it aside. She couldn't afford to go back to that place. Not now, not after everything. But life had a funny way of surprising you. She turned the corner, heading toward her apartment building when she saw him, standing under the awning of the coffee shop they used to frequent. His brown hair was wet from the rain, his hands shoved into his jacket pockets. He looked the same and yet different. Older maybe, but still the same Jack that had once made her feel like she was the only person in the world. Emma froze, her heart skipping a beat. It had been months since she last saw him, and yet here he was, as if the universe had decided to bring them back together, even if only for a fleeting moment. Jack's eyes caught hers, and for a moment, everything else in the world seemed to disappear. The people around them, the rain, the noise, it all faded away, leaving only the two of them. He hesitated, his gaze locking with hers as if he were trying to decide whether to approach or turn away. "Emma!" His voice was low, tentative, as if he wasn't sure if he had the right to say her name anymore. She swallowed, suddenly aware of how dry her throat had become. "Jack," she whispered, as though it were a secret she had kept hidden for too long. The moment hung between them, suspended in time. Neither of them moved, both caught in the weight of the years that had passed. Finally, Jack stepped forward, his hand reaching out almost instinctively as though he, too, had been waiting for this moment. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly, his eyes searching hers, as though hoping she would say yes. Emma hesitated. The pain of the past was still there, buried deep inside her, but the pull of the past, the unfinished story between them, was undeniable. She nodded slowly, the words caught in her throat. "Yeah," she said, her voice barely audible. "I think we should." They didn't need to say anything else. Jack took her hand, gently leading her back to the coffee shop, the place where it all began. It felt surreal, like they were stepping into a moment frozen in time, one they had both imagined but never truly believed would happen again. As they sat down at a table by the window, the rain continuing to fall outside, Emma realized she didn't know what to expect from this reunion. Would they be able to pick up where they left off? Or was this just another chapter in the story of their past, one that was best left closed? Jack looked at her, his gaze soft, his expression filled with a mixture of regret and hope. "I never thought I'd see you again, Emma. After you left, I couldn't stop thinking about you. About us." Emma's heart tightened. She had thought about him every day since she left, wondering what could have been, wondering if he ever thought of her. But hearing him say it out loud made everything feel too real. Too raw. "I left because I thought it was the only way," she said, her voice trembling. "I thought I needed space. Thought I thought that would make everything easier. Jack nodded. His eyes filled with understanding. I know. I never blamed you. I didn't know how to fix it. We were falling apart and I didn't know how to stop it. I still don't know how to fix it. Emma took a deep breath, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. I don't know if there's anything to fix, Jack. Maybe we've both changed. Maybe we're different people now. Jack reached across the table, his fingers brushing against hers. I don't want to be different, Emma. Not if it means losing you. The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of everything unsaid. Emma closed her eyes, her heart torn. She had spent so long moving forward, trying to put the past behind her. But sitting here with Jack, hearing the sincerity in his voice, the love that was still there beneath all the hurt, it made everything more complicated than she could have imagined. I don't know what to do, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I don't know if I can go back. Jack's eyes softened. I don't want to rush you, Emma. I just needed you to know that I'm here. If you want to try again, I'm willing to try. But I won't push you. I just need you to know I haven't forgotten you. The words were simple, but they carried a weight that Emma couldn't escape. She didn't know what the future held, or what would come of this reunion. But for the first time in a long while, she felt the pull of possibility. Maybe they could find their way back to each other. Maybe they couldn't. But either way, this was a moment that couldn't be ignored. Chapter 2. The weight of unspoken words. The minutes seemed to stretch into hours as Emma and Jack sat across from each other in the familiar coffee shop. The hum of the conversation around them was muted, as though their table was a quiet sanctuary amidst the noise of the world. The rain had slowed to a gentle drizzle outside, the soft pitter-patter on the windows providing a calming backdrop to the tension that lingered between them. Emma had taken a sip of her coffee, the warmth of the cup grounding her, but the bitter taste of uncertainty still lingered on her tongue. Her mind was racing, trying to make sense of everything she was feeling, everything she had been through. Her heart ached for the man sitting across from her, yet a part of her hesitated. Was she ready to open herself up to him again? Had enough time passed for the wounds to heal? She glanced at Jack, who was watching her intently, waiting for her to speak. His expression was soft, but there was an underlying intensity to his gaze, a quiet desperation that hadn't been there before. His usual confident demeanor was replaced with vulnerability, a stark contrast to the person she had known when they were together. Jack. Emma's voice cracked as she finally spoke, the weight of everything hanging on that single word. I don't know if I can go back. I've spent so much time trying to move on, and now, here you are bringing all of it back. Jack's fingers tightened around his coffee cup, but he didn't break eye contact. I didn't want to drag you back into this. But I couldn't keep pretending like nothing happened. Like you didn't matter. I've spent months trying to figure out how to fix things, how to make it right. But I know now. I can't fix everything. I can only be honest with you. Emma nodded slowly, feeling the weight of his words settling in her chest. He was being genuine, and that sincerity made it harder for her to ignore the feelings that were beginning to surface. She had always known that Jack had a good heart, that he loved her deeply. But it was the way they had ended that left scars she wasn't sure could ever fade. I never meant for things to fall apart the way they did, Jack continued, his voice softening with the admission. I got lost in everything. My job, my insecurities, everything that wasn't us. I neglected you. I didn't see how much you were hurting, how much I was hurting you. Emma's eyes welled up with tears, and she quickly wiped them away, not wanting to show weakness. The vulnerability she had hidden for so long was creeping back, the raw emotion of it almost too much to bear. You didn't see it, Jack. And I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when it wasn't. I tried to stay, tried to make it work, but we were drowning. I felt invisible. Jack's hand reached across the table, his fingers gently brushing hers, sending a spark of warmth through her. She hadn't realized how much she had missed this simple touch, the closeness, the connection that had once been so easy between them. I'm so sorry, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. I can't take back the time we lost, but I want you to know I'm not the same person I was when we ended. I've learned, Emma. I've learned the hard way that love isn't about possession. It's about trust, patience, and respect. And I've learned to appreciate that now. Emma swallowed hard, the tears threatening to fall again. I don't know if I can go back to that place, Jack. The place where I thought we were okay, but really we were just pretending. I can't pretend anymore. Jack nodded, his lips pressing into a thin line, as though he were grappling with the weight of her words. I know. And I don't want you to. I'm not asking you to forget what happened, Emma. But I'm here, and I'm willing to show you that I've changed. If you'll give me the chance. The words hung in the air, suspended in the space between them, and Emma found herself torn. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that things could be different this time, that they could heal what had been broken. But there was still so much fear, so much doubt lingering in her heart. Could she ever fully trust him again? I don't know, Emma said finally, her voice soft, almost a whisper. I don't know if I'm ready to dive back into this. I don't know if I can take the risk of being hurt again. Jack's eyes darkened, a flicker of pain crossing his face, but he didn't pull away. I understand. I just need you to know that I'm here. I won't pressure you. I won't rush you. But I'll wait, Emma. If that's what it takes, I'll wait for you. Her breath caught in her throat. This was different. The Jack she had known before would have demanded answers, would have wanted her to make a decision now. But this Jack, this version of him, was patient, understanding, and willing to give her space to figure out what she wanted. I'm not asking you to fix everything, she whispered, her voice trembling. I'm just asking for time. Time to figure out who I am now. Time to see if we can build something new. Jack's eyes softened, and for a moment, there was no hint of the man who had once made mistakes. There was only the man who was offering her something real, something honest, something that felt like it could grow into something beautiful again. You have all the time you need, he said, his voice filled with sincerity. I'll wait as long as it takes. Emma took a deep breath, a part of her relieved that the weight of their past wasn't forcing her to make an immediate decision. But another part of her, a small part that still cared deeply for Jack, felt the stirring of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there could be a way forward. But that was a journey they would have to take slowly, one step at a time. For now, Emma wasn't ready to make promises. But she wasn't ready to walk away either. There was a fragile thread of possibility that still lingered between them, and for the first time in a long time, she was willing to hold on to it. Chapter 3. The past that haunts. The rain had stopped by the time they left the coffee shop, the clouds slowly parting to reveal a soft gray sky. The streets were wet, reflecting the light of the city in shimmering puddles, and for a moment, it felt like everything was being cleansed, as if the rain had washed away the past. But Emma knew better. The past never truly left. It lingered like a shadow, waiting for the right moment to resurface. They walked side by side down the familiar streets, neither saying anything for a while. The silence between them was comfortable but heavy, filled with unspoken thoughts and unresolved emotions. Emma found herself glancing over at Jack from time to time, noticing the way his posture was slightly hunched, like he was carrying the weight of years of regret and missed opportunities. She wanted to ask him what had happened, what had caused them to drift apart in the first place. But the words felt too painful, too loaded. Could they even find answers for the things that had gone wrong? Or was it better to leave the past where it belonged, in the past? Finally, Jack spoke, breaking the silence that had stretched between them. You're right, you know, he said, his voice quieter than before. I can't expect everything to go back to how it was. We can't just pretend like nothing happened. But I need you to know that I've changed, Emma. I know I hurt you, and I know I wasn't there when you needed me. But I'm here now, and I'll do whatever it takes to show you that I'm different. Emma didn't respond right away. She could feel the sincerity in his words, the raw honesty that was so different from the man she had known before. But sincerity alone didn't heal wounds. The past couldn't just be erased because they wanted it to be. I'm not saying that I don't believe you, Emma said after a pause, her voice soft but firm. "But there are things I need to work through. I've spent months building a life without you, trying to find myself again. I'm not the same person I was when I left, Jack. I've changed too." Jack nodded, his lips pressed into a thin line. He seemed to understand, though the disappointment in his eyes was clear. "I get it. I'm not asking you to forget everything or just jump back into it. I want a chance to show you that I can be the person you deserve." Emma took a deep breath, her heart heavy with conflicting emotions. There was a part of her that wanted to take his hand and walk down this road with him again. There was a part of her that still loved him, still remembered the way he made her feel when everything was easy and perfect. But there was also a part of her that was afraid of losing herself again in a relationship that had once defined her. She hadn't realized just how much the weight of the past had shaped her until now. Her life without Jack had been a journey of rediscovery, of figuring out who she was outside of their relationship. She had learned to stand on her own, to be independent. But now, with him standing so close, offering her everything she had once wanted, the fear of losing herself again gripped her. "Can we take things slow?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I need time to figure things out. I need to know that I'm not just running back into something because it feels comfortable. I need to make sure that I'm doing this for the right reasons." Jack stopped walking, turning to face her fully. His gaze was soft, understanding, but there was still a flicker of hope in his eyes. "Of course. I'm not asking you to rush into anything. I'll take whatever time you need. I just want you to know that I'm here. And I'm not going anywhere." Emma felt a pang in her chest, the pull of everything she had once felt for him surfacing again. She had spent so much time trying to build a life without him, but no matter how far she went, no matter how many new people she met, no one had ever come close to making her feel the way Jack had. He had been her world, her anchor, and now, after all the time apart, he was still the person she could imagine a future with. But was it the right time? Was she ready to open that door again? As she met his eyes, she realized that she wasn't ready for all the answers yet. She wasn't sure if she ever would be. But maybe, just maybe, they could figure it out together. "I'm not saying yes," Emma said, her voice steady. "But I'm not saying no either. Let's see where this goes, Jack. Let's see if we can figure out who we are now." Jack's face softened into a smile, and for the first time since they had met again, Emma saw the man she had fallen in love with. The man who was kind, patient, and willing to give everything for the person he cared about. It was the man she had known once, and the man she could see herself knowing again. "That's all I can ask for," Jack replied. "We'll take it one step at a time." They continued walking, side by side, as the world around them seemed to fade away. There were still so many questions, so many uncertainties, but for the first time in a long time, Emma felt like maybe, just maybe, there was hope for them after all. Chapter 4. Echoes of the Past. The days following that conversation felt like a slow unraveling, a delicate dance between the past and the present. Emma and Jack saw each other occasionally, but each meeting was filled with moments of hesitation, of testing the waters to see if the bond they once shared was still there, or if it had been irreparably broken by the time that had passed. The tension between them wasn't entirely gone, but there was a new understanding, a quiet agreement to take things one step at a time. One evening, Jack invited her to a small art gallery opening, a casual event he had been looking forward to for weeks. The idea of stepping into a public space felt significant. It was a test, a chance to see if they could still function in the world they had once inhabited together, side by side. Emma hadn't been to an art show in months, since before everything had fallen apart. The thought of it was both exciting and daunting. When Emma arrived, Jack was already there, standing near the entrance with a glass of wine in his hand. His presence was familiar, yet there was a shift in how he held himself, as if he was walking on eggshells. Emma approached him, the weight of their past looming over her every step. "Hey," she said softly, offering a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She could feel the quiet tension between them, but there was also something else, a quiet sense of curiosity, of wanting to see if they could find their way back. Jack looked up at her, his face breaking into a small, tentative smile. "Hey, I'm glad you could make it." They exchanged small talk for a few moments, and then they made their way into the gallery. The space was filled with soft lighting, the walls adorned with abstract paintings that seemed to capture emotions more than images. The quiet hum of conversations, the clinking of glasses, the soft rustle of footsteps, all of it created a sense of distance. Emma felt herself relax slightly, enveloped in the atmosphere of the place. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she could breathe. As they walked through the gallery, Jack's arm brushed against hers, and she couldn't help but notice the way he seemed to be lingering just a little closer than necessary. Her heart fluttered, not from any sudden resurgence of old feelings, but from the fact that she could feel the difference between who they were back then and who they were now. She wasn't just Emma anymore. She was someone who had been broken and rebuilt in the time they had spent apart. "You're quiet tonight," Jack remarked, his voice low. "What are you thinking about?" Emma glanced at him, her thoughts swirling. "Just wondering how we got here," she said softly. "How we got from the way we were to this, to whatever this is now." Jack looked at her, his gaze searching. "I've wondered the same thing. I've spent a lot of time thinking about us, Emma. About what we had, what we lost, and what we might still have if we try again." The words stung more than Emma wanted to admit. They hung in the air between them, and for a moment Emma couldn't speak. The rawness of his confession felt like an open wound. She had spent so long avoiding this moment, avoiding the weight of the past. She wanted to respond, wanted to assure him that she was willing to try, that maybe there was hope for them, but the truth was more complicated than that. "I don't know, Jack," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want to believe that things can be different, but I'm afraid. I'm afraid that we'll fall back into the same patterns, that I'll lose myself in something that isn't healthy for me." Jack's expression softened, and he took a step closer, his voice low but steady. "I get it. Really do. I've been afraid too, Emma. I've been afraid of losing you, of not being the man you need me to be. But I swear, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to prove to you that I've changed." The sincerity in his voice made Emma's heart ache. She wanted to believe him more than anything, but the scars of their past were still fresh in her mind. She wasn't sure if she could ever let go of the fear that the same mistakes would be repeated, that the cycle would start again. "Maybe it's not about fixing what was broken," she said slowly, the words coming to her with surprising clarity. "Maybe it's about building something new. Maybe we can't just go back to who we were, but maybe we can create something different, something better." Jack seemed to consider this for a moment, and then he nodded, his eyes locking with hers. "I can live with that. I don't need things to go back to the way they were, Emma. I just want to be with you now, in whatever way that means. We'll figure it out. Together." The sincerity in his voice, the gentleness in his eyes. It was enough to break down the last of Emma's walls. For the first time she allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, they could build something new together. But it would take time, it would take patience, and it would take a willingness to face the demons of their past. As the evening wore on, they moved through the gallery, their conversation drifting from one subject to another, finding moments of lightness amid the heavy emotions. They didn't talk about the past again that night, but it hung there, unspoken, in the space between them. When they left the gallery, the air had grown colder, and Jack offered her his jacket, a gesture that Emma found both endearing and comforting. They walked down the quiet street, the city lights casting long shadows on the pavement, but there was a new sense of peace between them. They weren't fixed, no, far from it. But they had taken a step toward something that might one day resemble healing. And for Emma, that was enough for now. The next few days passed in a blur, as they fell back into a routine of spending time together, navigating the complicated space between them. Emma still wasn't sure if they could find their way back to each other completely, but she was beginning to see glimmers of something that resembled hope. They had both changed, both grown in ways that neither had expected, and while the past was still a heavy presence, it wasn't the only thing defining them anymore. Jack had asked her to go to dinner with him one evening at a small, quiet restaurant. It was a place they had frequented when they were together, a place that held memories of happy times. As they sat at their table, the soft glow of the candles flickering between them, Jack took her hand gently across the table, his thumb brushing over her skin in a way that made Emma's heart flutter. "Whatever happens," he said, his voice quiet but filled with conviction, "I want you to know that I'm not giving up on us. Believe in us, Emma. Even if it's slow, even if it takes time, I believe in what we could be." Emma squeezed his hand, her heart full of emotions she wasn't ready to name. "I want to believe that too, Jack. But it's going to take time." Jack smiled softly, a knowing look in his eyes. "Time is all I'm asking for." And as the evening stretched on, Emma found herself believing him, believing that perhaps with time they could find their way back to each other, not as who they once were, but as who they had become. Chapter 5. The Testing Ground. The weeks that followed their quiet dinner at the small restaurant felt like an experiment in patience. They were both treading carefully, each aware of the delicate nature of what they were attempting to rebuild. Their interactions were still light and measured, but the connection between them had begun to evolve. They had learned the art of small gestures, the way Jack would gently touch her shoulder when he passed by, the way Emma would glance at him over her coffee cup with a look that spoke volumes without a word. But there were also moments when the weight of their history would come crashing back in, like a wave that threatened to swallow them whole. There were times when Emma would catch Jack's gaze for just a second too long, wondering what was going on inside his mind. And Jack, ever the quiet thinker, would retreat into himself for a moment before pulling her closer, almost as if to reassure himself that she was still there, still with him. It was during one of these moments of quiet connection that Jack suggested they take a weekend trip to the mountains. It had been Emma's idea years ago, to visit the secluded cabin that sat nestled at the base of a lush valley. It had been a retreat for them both, a place to escape the pressures of the world and simply exist in each other's presence. Place to breathe. Emma's heart hesitated at the thought of going back to that place, but the idea lingered in her mind. They had spent so many weekends there before, and the memories of their time in the cabin were some of the best of their relationship. It felt like a test. Could they return to a place that held so much meaning for them without letting the past consume them? "I think it's a good idea," Emma said, her voice surprisingly steady. She met Jack's gaze, and for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel like she was carrying a weight. The decision wasn't made out of impulse, but out of necessity, a need to see if they could truly start again, to see if they could live in a space that didn't just belong to memories. Jack's eyes lit up, a smile tugging at his lips. "Really? I didn't think you'd say yes." "I didn't think I would either," Emma admitted. "But I think it's worth a shot. We need to see if we can make new memories there, Jack, without everything else weighing us down." He reached out and took her hand, squeezing it gently. "I promise, no pressure. Just us. Just the mountains, the trees, and maybe a little bit of quiet between us." The trip was set for the following weekend, and as the days passed, Emma found herself growing more and more excited. It was like a breath of fresh air, a chance to step away from the complications of their current reality and spend time with Jack in a new light. But even as the excitement built, she couldn't shake the nagging voice in the back of her mind. What if things didn't go as planned? What if the past was too overwhelming to escape, even for just a few days? The cabin stood as it always had, a small, cozy retreat surrounded by tall trees, with the mountains looming like silent guardians in the distance. The familiar scent of pine and wood smoke hit Emma as soon as they arrived, and she couldn't help but smile at the warmth that flooded her chest. There was something grounding about being back here, something that felt like coming home. But the moment they stepped inside, something shifted. It wasn't a grand, dramatic moment, but a subtle change, a quiet tension that hung in the air between them. They had both changed, and yet, they were standing in a place that held the ghosts of who they used to be. They unpacked their things in silence, each of them retreating into their own space. Jack went to the kitchen to start a fire in the stove, while Emma wandered around the cabin, touching the furniture, the old books they had once read together, the photographs on the walls. It was as if the cabin had preserved all the memories they had created there, memories that had once felt so tangible, so real. But now they felt distant, like an echo of something that belonged to a different time. Later that evening, they sat on the porch, wrapped in blankets to ward off the cool mountain air, staring out at the stars. The sky was vast and endless, stretching above them like a reminder of how small they were in the grand scheme of things. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable, but it wasn't the easy silence they had once shared. It was pregnant with possibility, filled with unspoken words and emotions that had nowhere to go. "Do you ever wish we could just go back?" Jack asked quietly, his voice almost lost in the wind. Emma turned to look at him, surprised by the question. "Back where?" "To the way we were," Jack said, his eyes not meeting hers. "When everything was so easy. When we didn't have to think about what came next. When we were just us." The simplicity of his words struck Emma deeply. It was a question she had asked herself countless times since they had reconnected. Could they really go back? Was it even possible? The idea of going back to the simplicity of their love, before it had been tested by time and distance, was both comforting and painful. "I don't know," Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Part of me wants to say yes, but part of me knows that it's not possible. We can't go back, Jack. We can only move forward." Jack nodded slowly, as if he had been expecting that answer. The silence stretched on between them again, but this time it felt different. It was the kind of silence that wasn't filled with regret, but with understanding. They had both accepted that they couldn't turn back time, that they couldn't undo the things they had done. But maybe, just maybe, they could build something new together. And so, they sat in the quiet of the mountain night, each lost in their own thoughts, but somehow together. They knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, and they knew that there were still so many uncertainties. But there, under the stars, Emma felt something stir within her. It wasn't the spark of the past. It was something new, something born of the present. And for the first time in a long while, she felt like she was ready to take that step forward. Chapter 6. A shift in the wind. The days at the cabin were a strange blend of nostalgia and discovery. The mornings were quiet, with the scent of fresh coffee filling the air and the soft sounds of birds chirping outside. The afternoons were spent hiking through the dense forest, following winding trails that led to hidden streams and rocky overlooks. The mountains, with their timeless majesty, felt like the perfect backdrop for this strange moment between Emma and Jack, a moment suspended between the past and the future. They fell into an easy rhythm, working together to prepare meals, splitting tasks around the cabin. Yet, there was always a careful distance between them, a space that neither dared to cross for fear of stirring up feelings they weren't yet ready to confront. The conversations were lighter, filled with casual stories and the occasional laugh, but neither of them ventured too deeply into the complexities of their relationship. The tension that had once hung between them began to melt in the embrace of the mountain air, but it was replaced by something subtler, a shared uncertainty. Could they truly rebuild the love that had once bound them together? Or were they simply two people passing through a moment in time, trying to recapture something that had already slipped away? One afternoon, Emma sat on the porch, wrapped in a cozy blanket with a book in her lap. The wind had picked up, rustling the leaves of the trees and carrying the scent of pine. She could hear Jack inside, fiddling with the firewood in the stove, preparing for dinner. The warmth of the fire would be a welcome relief from the cool mountain air. She took a deep breath, inhaling the crisp, pine-scented air, and then allowed her gaze to wander out to the horizon. The view from the porch stretched out for miles, rolling hills, forests, and distant peaks, the landscape a stunning canvas of nature. It felt like the kind of place where time stood still, where the world's pressures faded away, and where you could simply exist. Jack stepped outside, carrying 2 glasses of wine. "I thought we could drink too." "Well, to us," he said, handing her one of the glasses with a small, tentative smile. His eyes were bright, but there was a trace of uncertainty behind them, as if he, too, was unsure of what this moment meant. Emma took the glass, her fingers brushing his as she did. She had almost forgotten how easy it was to feel the spark of connection when their hands touched. "To us," she repeated, lifting her glass slightly before taking a sip. The red wine was smooth, its taste rich and earthy, complementing the atmosphere of the cabin and the mountains surrounding them. They sat together in silence for a few moments, the wind tousling their hair, the fire crackling softly inside. Emma felt a sense of peace settle in her chest, a momentary reprieve from the weight of everything that had happened before. But she also couldn't ignore the underlying question that lingered in her mind. Where did they go from here? "I've been thinking a lot about us," Jack said, breaking the silence. "About everything we've been through, about how far we've come since we first met." Emma turned to face him, her eyes soft. "And what have you been thinking?" Jack's gaze flickered to the ground, as though weighing his words carefully. "I think about how we both got lost in our own worlds for a while. I was so wrapped up in work, in my own problems, that I lost sight of what was really important. And I know I hurt you, Emma. I know that." Emma looked at him, her heart tightening. There it was, the thing she had wanted to hear. She had carried the pain of their past for so long, and hearing him acknowledge it felt like a release. But at the same time, it wasn't enough. It couldn't be. She wanted more than just words. She wanted to see if the change was real, if the person Jack had become could truly match the person she had hoped he would be. "You're right," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "You did hurt me. I think we both hurt each other. But it's not just about the mistakes we made. It's about what we do now, how we choose to move forward." Jack nodded, his eyes filled with understanding. "And that's what I'm trying to figure out. What I can do to prove to you that I'm not the same person I was before. That I'm ready to be who you need me to be." Emma set her glass down on the porch railing and stood up, walking a few steps to the edge of the porch where she could see the valley below. She could feel the cool breeze on her face, the weight of Jack's words pressing against her chest. The idea of moving forward, of giving them another chance, was tempting, but it felt like stepping into the unknown. "I don't need you to be perfect, Jack," she said, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside. "I just need you to be real with me, to be honest, to show me that you're not the man who walked away when things got hard." Jack stood up and walked to her side, his presence close but not intrusive. "I don't want to be that man anymore," he said softly. "I've spent so much time thinking about everything I lost when I let you go. I can't fix the past, but I can show you that I'm here now. I'm ready to try. And if you'll let me, I want to prove that to you." Emma turned to face him, her heart pounding in her chest. She had heard the sincerity in his voice, but there was still something in her that hesitated. Could she truly trust him again? Could she open herself up to him without the fear of being hurt all over again? "I don't know if I'm ready for that yet," Emma admitted, her voice almost a whisper. "I want to believe you, Jack. Really do. But trust isn't something that comes easily for me anymore." "I understand," he said, his tone soft and patient. "And I'm not asking you to trust me right away. But I'm asking for a chance. A chance to show you that I'm here, that I'm willing to fight for us." Emma swallowed hard, feeling a wave of emotion crash over her. The uncertainty, the longing, the hope, all of it was so overwhelming. But there was something in Jack's eyes that made her want to take that leap. Maybe it was the sincerity. Maybe it was the quiet promise he had made to her. Maybe it was the understanding that they didn't have to be perfect, they just had to be willing to try. "I'm not sure where this is going, Jack," she said softly. "But maybe, just maybe, we can figure it out together." Slowly, Jack smiled, the weight of the moment lifting as he took her hand in his. "Slowly is all I need. Just give me the chance, Emma. That's all I'm asking for." And for the first time in a long while, Emma allowed herself to believe that there was still a chance for them. That maybe, in the quiet moments, in the steady progress, they could rebuild what had been lost. As they stood together on the porch, the mountains towering above them, the wind carrying away their doubts, Emma knew that the journey ahead would be long, but it was a journey she was finally ready to take, if only one step at a time. Chapter 7: Shifting Currents. The following days in the cabin carried a sense of anticipation in the air. The promise of something new, something rebuilt, floated between them as if it could be touched but not yet fully grasped. Emma and Jack both understood that this fragile reconnection had to be nurtured, but they had no clear blueprint for how to navigate it. They were like two people learning how to walk together again after a long absence, unsure of each other's rhythm, but determined to keep moving. The mountain air was cold in the mornings, yet the sun shone bright, casting long golden beams through the trees, illuminating the quiet stillness of the valley. Each morning, they would share breakfast in the cozy kitchen, the rhythmic sound of coffee brewing mixing with their small talk. Yet, as comforting as their conversations were, Emma couldn't help but notice how much was left unsaid. How often their gazes would lock for a brief moment, the unspoken understanding of everything they had endured and everything still uncertain. The trips into the forest were a welcome distraction, allowing Emma and Jack to lose themselves in the natural beauty around them. There was something grounding about hiking through the woods, the mossy earth beneath their boots and the chorus of birds above them. The act of simply moving through the wilderness gave them a sense of freedom, but it also highlighted something else. They were learning how to be with each other again, not in the context of their old relationship, but as two individuals trying to figure out if they could be something new. One afternoon, after a particularly long hike to a nearby waterfall, Emma and Jack sat on a large, flat rock near the base of the falls. The water crashed loudly around them, and a cool mist hung in the air, refreshing and cleansing. "I used to love coming here," Emma said, her voice rising above the roar of the water. "I always felt like the world didn't matter when I was here. It was just us, the trees, the waterfall. Everything felt so simple." Jack turned his gaze from the waterfall to her, his eyes soft, reflecting a mix of nostalgia and curiosity. "I remember how we used to come here every summer. You always had that look in your eyes, like you were trying to figure something out, like you were holding on to something." Emma smiled faintly, the memory of her younger self coming alive for a moment. "I was always trying to figure myself out," she admitted. "I thought I had it all figured out back then, but the truth is I didn't. I still don't." Jack's expression softened. "None of us do, really. We're all just trying our best day by day. I think we've always been in this constant state of becoming, haven't we?" Emma met his gaze, surprised by his insight. She had expected him to offer some reassurance, but instead, he had given her something far more genuine. An acknowledgement that both of them were still evolving, that they weren't expected to have all the answers, that it was okay to be uncertain. "We've changed so much," she said, her voice low. "But I think that's part of it, Jack. I think we have to change to make it work, to make whatever this is now work." Jack nodded, then reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face in a gesture so familiar yet new. His touch felt soft, almost hesitant, as if he was trying to gauge how close he could get without crossing a line. It was a touch that spoke volumes, of his own uncertainty, of the walls he was still trying to bring down. "I don't know if we can go back to who we were," he said quietly, "but I don't want to. I want to see who we can become together. I want us to be something better than before. And I'll work every day to show you that." Emma's heart fluttered at his words, and for the first time in a long while, she felt the first hints of hope bloom within her. She had always dreamed of this moment, of Jack returning to her, asking for another chance, but now that it was here, it felt different. She didn't want to just fall back into old patterns. She didn't want the past to define their future. She wanted to carve out something new with him, even if it meant starting from scratch. "Do you think we can do that?" Emma asked softly, her eyes searching his. "I do," Jack replied with a quiet confidence. "I think we can. But it's not going to be easy. We'll have to face things we've been avoiding. We'll have to face the parts of ourselves that we've been hiding from each other." Emma nodded, understanding. "I'm willing to face them. If you are." The silence that followed wasn't heavy, but it was filled with possibility. The rushing of the waterfall, the wind in the trees, the soft sound of their breathing. It was as if the world had paused, allowing them a moment to reflect, to decide. They were standing at the edge of something new, something uncharted, and it was up to them to take the first step forward. "Let's take it slow," Emma suggested, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "We've both been through so much, Jack. But I think we can start fresh. One step at a time." Jack smiled then, the kind of smile that reached his eyes and lit up his whole face. It was the kind of smile Emma had missed, the kind that reassured her that they could do this, together. "One step at a time," he agreed, his voice firm but warm. And in that moment, with the waterfall cascading beside them and the mountains standing silently in the distance, Emma allowed herself to believe in the possibility of a new beginning. A beginning that wasn't built on the past but on the strength of their desire to create something better, something more real. The day slipped into evening as they made their way back to the cabin, walking side by side, their steps in sync. And though the road ahead was still uncertain, there was something undeniably different between them now. They weren't just two people trying to fix what had been broken. They were two people willing to rebuild, piece by piece, with patience, trust, and love. Chapter 8. Underneath the Stars. The night was clearer than any they'd seen since arriving at the cabin. The sky above was a deep indigo, dotted with countless stars that shimmered in the cool, crisp air. The moon hung high and bright, casting a soft, ethereal light across the forest, illuminating the edges of the trees and the shadows of the cabin in the distance. It was the kind of night that made the world feel vast, as though all the troubles and uncertainties of their lives could fade into the expanse of the universe. Jack and Emma sat on the porch again that evening, wrapped in blankets, the crackle of the fire inside the cabin echoing into the night. The cool breeze tugged at their clothes, but it was a welcome touch after the long hike, and the warmth of the fire kept them comfortable. They both held mugs of hot tea, their fingers lightly curled around the ceramic. The soft glow from the firelight played across their faces, highlighting the quiet expressions they wore. Thoughtful, introspective, and somehow at peace. "I've always loved the stars," Emma said softly, her voice breaking the silence between them. She tilted her head back to look at the sky. "They always made me feel small, but in a good way, you know? Like no matter how messed up things get, the universe is still turning. There's something comforting about that." Jack followed her gaze upward, his eyes reflecting the vastness of the sky above them. He smiled faintly, and Emma could see in his expression that the stars, too, had a way of making him feel grounded. "I used to look at the stars all the time when I was younger. There was something calming about knowing there was a whole world out there that we didn't have to control. It was just there." "Yeah," Emma agreed, her voice a little softer now. "It's humbling. It reminds you that we're just a part of something bigger than ourselves." They fell into a comfortable silence again, each of them lost in their own thoughts as the night stretched on. Emma let the quiet settle around her, appreciating the peace of the moment. There were no demands here, no expectations, just the soothing sound of the wind in the trees and the occasional crackle of the fire. Felt right. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to let go of the weight she had been carrying, of the past, of the hurt, of the walls she had built around her heart. In this moment, with Jack beside her, she could almost imagine that things could be easy again. But that feeling of serenity was fleeting, replaced by a subtle tension that Emma couldn't ignore. It was the same tension that had been lurking under the surface of their interactions, a reminder of everything that had happened before, everything that still needed to be said, even if neither of them had quite found the words for it. She could feel it in the way Jack's hand occasionally brushed against hers, a touch that was soft and tentative but filled with unspoken emotion. She knew he wanted more than just the easy silence. He wanted more than just rebuilding what they had lost. He wanted something deeper, something real. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said the other day." Jack broke the silence, his voice quiet but steady. "About how we can't go back to who we were. And I agree with you. We can't. But I don't think we should try to. I think we should try to find out who we are now." Emma turned her head to look at him, her heart skipping a beat at the seriousness in his eyes. He wasn't looking at her with longing, with the desperation she had sometimes seen in him before. No, this was different. This was a look of genuine understanding, of wanting to be present for whatever came next, no matter how uncertain it might be. "Who we are now," she echoed, her voice thoughtful. It felt like a profound statement, one that carried weight far beyond the simplicity of the words. It was a challenge and an invitation all at once. "I think," Jack continued, his voice gaining confidence, that we can be something better than we were. Not because we were broken, but because we've both grown. We've learned so much from what happened, even if it wasn't easy. And I think we can create something different this time. Something that's not based on old expectations or old mistakes. Emma smiled at his words, the warmth spreading through her chest. You're right. We can create something new. But it's going to take time. And trust. Jack reached out, his hand brushing against hers again, this time with a firmer touch. It wasn't a desperate grasp, but rather an offering. A sign that he was there, that he was willing to put in the effort, to be patient with her and with themselves. I'm willing to take the time, he said quietly. I'll wait as long as it takes. Emma's heart swelled at his words. There was something about the honesty in his voice, something raw and genuine that made her want to believe him. Maybe they could build something new, something stronger than before. Maybe the past didn't have to dictate the future after all. For a long while, neither of them spoke. They simply sat together, watching the fire burn down to embers, listening to the quiet sounds of the night surrounding them. The stars overhead felt close, almost within reach, as if the universe itself was holding its breath, waiting for them to make the next move. Finally, Emma broke the silence, her voice low but filled with emotion. I'm scared, Jack. I'm scared of getting hurt again. Of opening myself up to you and falling back into old patterns. I know, Jack replied, his voice gentle. I'm scared too. But I'm not asking you to trust me all at once. I'm asking you to trust me step by step, day by day. And I'll show you that I'm worth it. Emma turned to face him fully now, her eyes searching his. She could see the sincerity in his gaze, the vulnerability in the way he looked at her. There was no mask anymore, no barriers between them. Just two people standing on the edge of something new, something uncharted. I'll take it slow, she said softly. One step at a time. Jack smiled, and it was the kind of smile that made Emma believe that maybe, just maybe, they could get it right this time. There was no rush, no need to force anything. They had time. They had each other. And for the first time in a long time, Emma felt the weight of the world lift from her shoulders. Just a little bit. The night stretched on, the stars above them glittering with the promise of something new, something beautiful. Chapter 9, The Test of Time. The following weeks unfolded gently, like the turning of pages in a book. Jack and Emma had settled into a comfortable rhythm at the cabin, spending their days exploring the surrounding forests, cooking meals together, and engaging in the kind of quiet, thoughtful conversations that had once marked their relationship. Yet, beneath the surface of their everyday routine, an undercurrent of anticipation swirled, an unspoken awareness that something had to change for them to truly move forward. Emma had been keeping herself busy with small projects around the cabin, knitting a blanket she'd started months ago, rearranging the bookshelf, and planting flowers in the garden that Jack had tended to, though he'd never been much of a gardener before. With each passing day, she saw the traces of their old selves blending into something new, as if their connection was weaving itself back together, stitch by stitch. But with every step forward, there was still a sense of fragility in the air. It felt as if the foundation they were building was unstable, shifting with each passing day. Jack was quieter than she remembered him being, a little more withdrawn at times, like he was holding something back. There were still moments when he would look at her with that same expression, the longing mixed with regret, the desire to make things right. She could see that he was trying, but the weight of the past seemed to linger between them, ever present, waiting for the right moment to surface. One afternoon, as they walked back from a hike along the ridge, Emma felt a sudden shift in the air. The breeze, once gentle and warm, had turned sharp and cool, carrying the scent of rain. They had both noticed the sky darkening above, the thick clouds gathering like an omen. The quiet forest had turned eerily still, as if holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Looks like rain, Emma said, her voice light, but she couldn't ignore the unease stirring in her chest. Yeah, Jack replied, glancing up at the sky. He reached out to grab her hand, and for a brief moment, Emma felt a flash of warmth in the contact. But it quickly faded, replaced by something more subtle, something unspoken. They quickened their pace, heading back toward the cabin, but the rain came faster than they anticipated. By the time they reached the porch, they were soaked to the bone, laughing at their misfortune as they hurried inside. "I'll get us something warm," Jack said, grinning, his tone light despite the sudden storm outside. He tossed his jacket aside and made his way to the kitchen. Emma, still smiling, kicked off her boots and draped a towel around her shoulders. As she stood by the fire, the warmth of the flames on her face, she realized how much she had missed this feeling, the familiarity of their shared space, the comfort of their quiet moments together. But even as she stood there, content for a brief moment, she knew there was something lurking beneath the surface, something she had been avoiding. Her heart thudded a little harder in her chest as she realized that this, their tentative peace, wasn't enough. They weren't ready yet. They still had so much to face before they could truly move forward. As Jack returned with 2 mugs of hot cocoa, his smile fading as he saw her expression, Emma spoke, her voice unexpectedly calm. "Jack, we need to talk." He hesitated for a moment, his eyes scanning her face, then nodded slowly, setting the mugs down on the table. They sat across from each other, the crackle of the fire filling the space between them, but this time it didn't seem comforting. The air felt thick, charged with the weight of unspoken truths. "I think it's time we face some of the things we've been avoiding," Emma continued, her voice steady but betraying a hint of the anxiety she felt. "I've been thinking about us, about everything, and I don't know if we're really ready to move forward yet. There's still so much that we haven't dealt with. I don't want to keep pretending that we're okay when there are things we're both holding on to." Jack's gaze softened, but there was a flicker of tension behind his eyes. He ran a hand through his wet hair, exhaling slowly. "I know what you mean. I've been feeling it too. We've been tiptoeing around the past, acting like it's not there. But I think we need to face it, Emma. I think we need to confront what happened, and decide if we can forgive each other." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. Emma's breath caught in her chest. This was the moment they'd both known was coming. She had been waiting for it, but now that it was here, she wasn't sure she was ready to confront the full depth of the pain they had caused each other. "I don't know if I can forgive everything," she admitted quietly, her voice trembling. "I don't know if I can forget the things that happened between us, the things we did to each other." Jack's eyes darkened, his jaw tightening, but he nodded. "I understand. And I don't expect you to forgive me all at once. I need you to know that I'm sorry. I've always been sorry for what I did, for how I hurt you. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make up for it, if you'll let me." The sincerity in his voice hit her like a wave. It wasn't the same desperate apology she had heard in the past. It was something different, something real. But was it enough? Was it enough to rebuild everything they had destroyed? Emma closed her eyes for a moment, the weight of the decision pressing on her. "I want to believe you," she whispered. "I really do. But we can't just pretend like it never happened, Jack. We can't just sweep it under the rug and move on." "I know," he replied softly. "But we can try. We can take it one day at a time and we can make it work. I'll prove it to you." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The rain pattered against the window, the wind howling outside, but inside there was only silence. It was the kind of silence that felt like a crossroads, the moment before everything changed. Emma looked up at Jack, her heart beating in her chest. She wasn't sure if she was ready, if she was strong enough, but she couldn't ignore the glimmer of hope that had slowly started to rekindle within her. Maybe they weren't broken beyond repair. Maybe, just maybe, they could find their way back to each other. Slowly but surely. "One day at a time," she echoed, the words a promise, a challenge, and a prayer all at once. Jack smiled, and for the first time in a long time, it was a smile that didn't carry any regret or doubt. It was a smile full of hope, full of the possibility that, together, they could find their way back to something worth fighting for. Chapter 10. A New Beginning. The following days after their conversation were filled with a quiet, steady transformation. Emma and Jack did not rush to resolve everything at once. They didn't attempt to pretend that everything was fine, Nor did they force themselves to move past the past so quickly. They took the slow route, allowing themselves the space and the time to heal, bit by bit, day by day. It wasn't easy. At times, the weight of their history would come crashing back, like a wave threatening to pull them under. There were moments when they would sit in silence, each of them feeling the distance that still existed between them. But there were also moments of laughter, small bursts of joy as they rediscovered the things they had loved about each other in the first place. The ease of a shared look, the way their hands brushed together while they worked around the cabin, the way their shared memories would resurface like forgotten songs. Each small connection added a layer to the fragile bridge they were rebuilding. They were learning how to trust again, not just with their words but with their actions. Jack would bring her tea in the mornings, just as he had when they first met. Emma would leave him little notes in the kitchen, hidden in the most unexpected places, reminding him of the things they once shared. They were learning how to be there for each other, not as a couple trapped by expectations, but as two individuals choosing to build something new, something meaningful. The changes were small, almost imperceptible, but they were there. The air between them no longer felt thick with regret or silence. It was filled with something lighter now. Hope, patience, possibility. Jack wasn't trying to erase the past, and neither was Emma. They were simply learning how to move forward without being weighed down by it. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in a golden, fading light, Emma and Jack sat outside again on the porch, their shoulders brushing as they leaned back against the cabin. The fire pit was crackling softly, sending up occasional sparks that twirled up into the darkening sky. It was a peaceful night, one of those rare moments where everything felt as it should be. Quiet, still, content. Jack turned his head to look at Emma, his eyes full of something warm, something quiet. "Do you ever think about what happens next?" he asked, his voice softer than it had been in the past. There was no urgency in his words, just a simple curiosity, a desire to know what she was thinking. Emma looked up at the sky, her eyes tracing the stars that were beginning to appear. The world felt vast in this moment, but it wasn't overwhelming. It was comforting, as if the universe itself was inviting them to take a step forward, one that they had chosen together. "I think about it all the time," she replied, her voice thoughtful. "But it's not just the future that I'm focused on right now. Right now. This moment. I'm trying to appreciate what we have, the way things are slowly coming back together, piece by piece. I'm not rushing to figure out everything, Jack. I think we've already started something beautiful. The rest will come in time." Jack nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. "I agree. I don't want to rush anymore. I just want to be here, with you, in this moment." Emma smiled at his words, feeling a deep sense of peace settle within her. She realized, as she looked at him in the fading light, that she had been afraid of the future, afraid of making the wrong choices, of falling back into old habits. But now, with Jack by her side, she felt something different. She felt a quiet confidence in what was to come. Not because she had all the answers, but because, together, they had found a way to start over. Slowly, carefully, but surely. Their fingers intertwined as they sat there, the silence between them no longer filled with tension but with understanding. It wasn't perfect, and it never would be, but it was real. And for the first time in a long time, Emma believed that they could build something stronger than what they had lost. Something that was theirs, shaped by the choices they made now, not the mistakes of the past. The fire crackled softly in the background, and the stars above seemed to shine a little brighter, as though the universe itself had decided to give them a blessing, a gentle nod of approval. For the first time in a long time, Emma felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. With Jack, there were no more questions, no more doubts. There was only the promise of the future, one that they would face together, one day at a time. And so, as the world around them grew darker and the fire began to fade, Emma closed her eyes for a moment, breathing in the cool night air. When she opened them again, she saw Jack looking at her, his smile soft and filled with quiet affection. The past was behind them now, and the future, whatever it held, was theirs to create. Together.